أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتحدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الحمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا والشفيع ذنوبنا سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين صاحب العصر والزمان خليفة الرحمن إمام الإنس والجان ولعن الله وعداهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين أما بعد فقد قال الله وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ما خلقت الجن والإنس إلا ليعبدون صلوا على محمد وعلى محمد. Our discussion for the past 3 nights has been revolving around beautifying our worship. And this, of course, is in light of these days being the days of our 4th Imam, Imam Sajjad alayhi salatu wassalam. And looking at his laqab called Zainul Abidin, the beauty of the worshippers. And we've been trying now for the past 2 nights to talk about the idea that how can we bring a little bit of beauty to our own worship. The reality is that we've been worshiping Allah for a very long time, and the impact of that worship, the effects of that worship that we keep hearing about and reading about, sometimes we don't see in our daily life. And we talked about the haqq of Allah 2 nights ago, that being ibadat and worship, that Allah of course is the only ma'bud who's layiq of that worship, who's worthy of that worship. And last night we spoke a little bit about the fa'il and the fi'il, if you remember last night's discussion. We said that worship or worship by itself is beautiful. If anything needs to be beautified, it's the worshipper itself. And we said that the deen itself is kamil, perfect and beautiful. It's us who need to purify ourselves as we go up the ladder, inshallah. In tonight's discussion, as I mentioned to all of you, sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. If you recall last night, I talked about the fact that before we can expect beauty to be installed in our worship, we have to remove the viruses. In lawn care, you remove the weeds and the grass will grow, or sometimes the weeds grows with the grass. Unless those weeds are removed, the lawn won't look the way you want it to look. So we have to identify that factor or factors that simply doesn't want us to have our worship beautified. And that, of course, is a discussion on Shaytan. And tonight will be a talk about Shaytan and our worship. We really have to identify how he works, his motives, what is it that he is after, and his tricks and traits that he uses. Because he's becoming effective more so than I'd like, especially amongst the heart of our youth sometimes. And I think what they're doing sometimes is that they are misunderstanding the waswasa of Shaytan, the trap of Shaytan, and their inability to worship Allah. There's a big difference between the two, right? It's one where Shaytan, of course, is using every tactic to pull you off the path. It's one where you believe you're not worthy or not able to be on the path. No, they're two different things here. Let's identify, first of all, the reality of Shaytan, the motive of Shaytan, what exactly he wants to understand or what to do. And of course, we'll use Surah Al-A'raf, that conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, where, very famously he talks about the idea that, look, I want respite from you. When this hukam came down for sajda of Adam, and of course he didn't do that sajda, and Allah says that you are to leave and you are to be ikhraj from my kingdom, you are to be kicked out from his kingdom. At that moment, he says, Anzurni ila yawmi yub'athun. I want respite. I want some time from you, God. And these are things you've heard since you were a child. But do you ever wonder why Shaytan asked for time? He knew that he was banished. He knew that he was going to be punished. In fact, I can say this, and many of you may not like it, but he had the basic beliefs that you and I have as well. He believed in Allah. He believed in the idea of prophethood, the Khilafat of Adam, and he believed in Yawm Yub'athun, the Day of Judgment. So he knew that, I'm now going up against Allah. There's going to be punishment for sure. I believe in that, no doubt, but I want respite. I want some time. Until when? Until the Day of Judgment. إِلَى يَوْمِ يُبْعَثُونَ. Allah says, قَالَ إِنَّكَ مِنَ الْمُنْذَرِينَ. You are amongst those who have been respited. You've been given time now. Okay. Now many of you ask me why did Allah give him that time? Because we sometimes misunderstand the idea that Allah gave him time, but Allah never gave him power beyond his existence. Many times we believe that it was Shaytan that dragged me to this area, or forced my tongue to say this, or tied my hands, or did this, when in reality he has no sultanat over you, the Quran says. He's not a sultan over you, doesn't have any physical power over you. He's been given time, and there's a reason why he was given time. There's a reason why he also asked for time. And my discussion tonight is, why did he ask for time? Because the very next verse, when he was given that respite, he does something very, very interesting. It says, قَالُوا فَبِمَا أَغْوَيْتَنِي. Very, very carefully. This is all, of course, in Surah Al-Araf, I think the 13th or 14th verse, all the way down. He then says, you give me respite now. Now what he does is that he blames Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Very carefully, please. He blames Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to say, you know what? I'm in this mess because of you, God. You created me, you put me in that position to bow down to Adam. You knew I wouldn't. You knew I'm from fire, he's from clay. All of this, of course, I'm paraphrasing, was this scheme of yours to get me out of your Jannah. He completely, absolutely removed any sort of accountability from himself and put it in the lap of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's important to know that later on in my speech. Right away, the moment that Allah says that what innaka min al-munzarin, you are now the one who has been respited, you have time now. He then says, okay, I'm given time, I'm going to leave now and have my time, but before I do that, I'm going to blame you as I'm leaving. Doesn't me. Before Adam, I was your best jinn. 4,000 years I worshipped you. This Adam came in Garbar, he messed up everything for me. And now all of a sudden, now because of this one Adam and because of you, there was some sort of coalition between you two, you have me kicked out of Jannah. Blames Allah. And then of course, metaphorically, right in the face of Allah, he says what? لَأَقْعُدَنَّ لَهُمْ صِرَاطَكَ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ. I'm going to, now the Arabic says I'm going to sit on their path. Qa'ud is not sitting. Jalasa is sitting. Somebody who sits on a chair like these young gentlemen is what? Are they sitting? Jalasa. Qa'ud is something different. Qa'ud is somebody who waits in ambush. Please follow very carefully. Waiting in ambush, like that cop who's in the 295 behind a bunch of bushes. He's waiting for you to go a little bit above 80, 90, 100 clicks, and his lights are on. And then he gives you time and he goes back to his ambush. And he waits there all day. He's got all the time in the world. He said, I'm going to sit there, I'm going to wait in ambush on what? Siratakal mustaqim, on your straight path. The fact that he says your straight path means what? There's 1,000 other paths as well. He's not concerned about that path, he's concerned about the straight and right path. Which tells us that yes, the moment that we decide, my youth, decide to tread the path of mustaqim, Shaytan is on that very path. He's not on the path to the clubs, not on the path to the bars, not on the path to that fitna, that facade. No, he's conquered those paths. He says, Siratakal mustaqim, your path, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? All right. And then he says something very interesting. He says, now I'll tell you exactly how I'm going to misguide them. I'll tell you exactly in which angle I'm going to attack these individuals on your path. Right? من بين أيديهم, in front of them, ومن خلفهم, beside them, وعن أيمانهم, from the right, وَعَنْ شَمَائِلِهِمْ from the left. Okay? All right. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean that metaphorically, does that mean that physically he's in front of us, behind us? No, he's not. What does it mean when Shaytan says that from the front, from the back, from the right, from the left? If I had more time, the whole ashra, I would go, all four require one majlis. But tonight, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. But in tonight's speech, I want to focus on two areas, from the back and from the right. It's important, I tell you. A lot of your youth out there, a lot of these young, beautiful faces are looking at me right now. They have all the tools to be the great abid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Shaytan has done such a masterpiece on them, they now truly believe they can't do it. And he's played with their confidence. And it kills me when I talk to these individuals one-on-one sometimes, it kills me to see the fight inside of them. But remember, what Shaytan wanted to do was he knew it was coming. He says, if I'm going to go down, I'm going to take your servants with me. I'm not leaving quietly. Right? It's like that person who has been banned from the community, and then that's when all the emails come out. Right? Somebody who's been fired from the company now, and then all the emails come out. If I'm going down, I'm taking the whole ship with me as well. Everyone's going down with me. You watch what I do. And I'm going to make you understand, Allah, that I'm not the only one that's worthy of this ikhraj. Your banda, your Krishna you think is yours, I will. From all four corners now, I will take them off one by one. Because the ending of that verse says that very few of your creations will be amongst the shakireen, amongst the thankful ones. Meaning what? That they will absolutely listen to my whisper. What does the back, what does the right mean? Let's discuss that. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. These obviously are metaphors, right? He is not in physical form. He comes in the form of jinn and ins, of humans and jinn, no doubt, right? His shayateen, his army of shaitan, or sometimes exists within the human form. There are humans walking amongst us that work for shaitan, that's obvious. But he was very specific in saying that I'm going to go behind them and to the right. Behind them, he uses a tactic of people's past very carefully. Sometimes, in this battleground of a youth, and even my elders have gone through this, and sometimes some of you are still going through it, that there were moments where we used to be individuals that used to never miss one salat. For example, I'm saying. Then how many times have I seen or heard youth come and tell me, there used to come a time where every morning Dua Ahad I recited. I used to recite Ziyad al-Ashura almost every single day. There's a moment where, mustahab prayers was a norm for me. The Quran at least 5 to 10 ayats before I went to bed. I did this, I did that, I did this, and all of that, I'm just not able to do it anymore. I haven't done it in years. There came a time, did you know that I wore hijab, Maulana? And now I don't wear hijab anymore. And Shaitan now plays with this idea that at one moment you were able to be a true servant of Allah, and now for reason X, Y, and Z, you're not, or things have kind of lessened, or things have dropped from your daily habit. And he uses that to tell you that, what? You can never get back there again. That was a one and done idea. That week, or that year, or those 6 months, or that 1 or 2 years that you wore hijab in school, you'll never be able to capture that again. Those days that you read Dua Ahad and Ziyat al-Waratha and Ziyat al-Ashura and all these things, and you were flying towards Allah, those were eons ago. Forget about that. You can't get back to that again. And he begins now to play with your past. Behind you means behind you in terms of your past, some tafsir say. And begins to play with the mindset that all those skeletons in your closet, all those mistakes you made, all those sins you committed when you were 15, 16, 17, 18, are all things that right now are still haunting you. And so literally when we begin to move towards Allah, he reminds us of those things we did when we were 18, 19 years old. He tells us, wait a second, you're the same guy that did this when he was 20. Now you're going back to Allah? And he actually makes our youth believe that I need a clean record with Allah for him to hear me. He actually makes us believe that I need to be infallible to have my dua heard. And so he tells us, look, those glory days that you wish to get back to, forget about it. You can't do it. You're a different guy now. You have different friends now. You have different likings now. You've tasted the freedom of not having hijab on your head. You're not going to go back to that. Whereas Allah says, absolutely not. If you were able to conquer your nafs once, you could do it several times again and again. Once you build that empire once inside of you, it never goes away. You are forever able to recapture the glory days of spirituality. You're absolutely able to go back to those years in high school where you wore hijab, put it back on. Now, maybe with that tawfiq now, you're stronger than you were before. But don't think for a moment that Shaytan now plays with our past thinking what? That you'll never be able to do it. Allah says, no. You did it once, you'll do it again. It's one thing where we weren't able to do it. We were never able to put hijab on, never able, let's say, to do this, or Salatul Layl, or Fajr, let's say, for example. That's one thing. Maybe, inshallah, one day I can attempt to establish that. But it's one way you've actually gone through the journey. You've already done it. And for whatever reason, your friends, or time, or doubt, or Shaitan, you kind of went off the path. And now we're doing the bare minimum. I can't even find 5 minutes for 5 verses of the Quran today. I can't do it. Maybe there's more barakat in time then. I don't know. And we start to believe that I'm not able to be that person again. That's dangerous. That's the part that Shaitan now is infiltrated inside of you, has made you believe that you are a person that you were never to begin with. And that's why he wants time to lie in the ambush, and man, I'm here for as long as you need me to be here. I'm here until your whole life, and I will continue to ambush you, and ambush you, and ambush you. And so a lot of my youth have convinced themselves, I can never go back to those days. And Shaitan makes you believe that. He makes you believe that you have absolute no right. The gall you have to go and begin to worship Allah. The gall you have to put back your hijab, put your hijab back on when you've taken pictures now at weddings and social media of your hair flowing in the wind. Who's going to erase all those pictures? Who's going to sit there and and take off all those social media links? They're there forever. They're there for life. People have screenshots of you saved in their phone. Forget all that. We're like, yeah, you're right. Those days are gone. Let's just do the bare minimum. And we're convinced. It's a satanic tool. It's a satanic trick, the trick that he uses. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you something completely different. That yes, you go up and down, but believe in your ability to stay up. Believe in your ability to understand that at one point I was at this high. And for some reason, I can't recapture that. It's not that you can't recapture it. You did it once, Allah says you'll do it 1,000 times. But believe you can do it 1,000 times. You can't pull that trigger because Shaitan tells you, what are you doing? Is this a game, a seesaw, a yo-yo? Are you a hypocrite? That one day you believe in one thing, one day all of a sudden now you wake up and what, there's a beard in your face? A hijab on your head? Now all of a sudden Fajr namaz? Right? It's a game you're playing. And Allah doesn't like games. Allah likes sincere individuals. Not you who are playing games. And enough of that whispering, we start to believe it. And so then we settle. And we settle for those areas that are bare minimum. And we actually begin to tell ourselves the amount that I do is not only enough, but good enough. And we become spiritually complacent. No islah, no reform, no growth, no movement, no taharruk, no harakat, nothing. I'm good where I am, right? And then we go even one step further, because what he does is that he does not come out and say, commit this sin. Doesn't do that. He says, take one step. Right? And then we start to think, look, the fire is 100 meters from me. And I take one step towards the fire. And your mom grabs you. Say, where are you going? That's the fire. Say, Mom, the fire's all the way there. I can't even feel the heat of the fire. One step won't do anything. One step will do nothing. And that one step Shaitan has got you to take towards the fire. Then just take another step. He takes another step. In Jannah literally means the word Jannah. One meaning we have in Kitab al-Lughat is that Jannah means an area that's green that has thousands of trees on it. Okay? That's what Jannah is. It's a garden with 1,000+ trees on it. And the story of Adam and this one tree is so symbolic of us today that of the millions of trees that you could have went to Adam, the one tree Allah says don't, Shaytan says just walk one step towards that one tree. Just take the step. Just take the step. Just take the step. And the step gets closer and closer and closer until you're finally at that tree. And that tarki ola happens. Same idea. The fire is way back there. One step won't do me. One small sin, it's okay. One inhale, one puff, one this, one picture, one that. Won't do anything. One becomes two, two becomes five. And now you're what? You're burning in the hellfire. You're burning in the fire. That's all Shaytan wants you to do. Just take one step. It doesn't say, oh, go commit haram number 33485. Doesn't do that. He'll say, oh, that's haram. I'm not going to do it. What he will say is just take a step. And okay, I take a step. What's a big deal? It's a step. That's okay. And you take enough steps. You go from dhikr to liquor. Very, very close. From dhikr to liquor. After a couple of steps. And he says, shabash. That's what I wanted. And he keeps on fulfilling the promise to Allah that you watch. You watch what I do. If I'm going down, I'm taking every single one of your youth with me. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So remove these things from our minds. Understand the waswasa of Shaytan. You start to recognize his voice. All of a sudden now, all those capabilities are gone from you. No, they're always in there. They're in there somewhere. They're in the basement in a box labeled capability. Find that box, open it, and begin to take it out. That's from behind. وَمِنْ أَيْمَانِهِمْ, from the right. What does the right mean? Now you know that yameen in Islam usually is for good things. Ashab yameen, the good individuals. People who are from the right. When we're given our kitab al-amal inshallah in our grave, we'll be given it to our right hand. Right? Right means good usually, khair, good deeds. It would make more sense for Shaytan to attack us from the left. That is usually the bad deeds. But no, he says, I'm gonna go from the right as well. But the right is good. How does he do that? He does that very easily. And he attacks the good deeds that we do. So now, not only has this young 16, 17-year-old now broken the chains of this dunya and actually moved towards good, but now Shaytan says, you know what? I'll meet you there. I'll be there before you're there. And then we end up doing good deeds and elevating them to the point where we think we've changed the world. You know, Nabi Ibrahim and his son built the Kaaba. Okay? Built the Kaaba. Brick by brick, he built the Kaaba. Forever to be a form, or a source, or a location of the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hajj is defined by this black cube that was created by Nabi Ibrahim. Right. Now forever and ever, whoever comes and does 2 rakat of salat, he gets 10% Nabi Ibrahim. Right? I mean, his commission now is set for life. He can retire and simply live on commission alone. That's how much good he's done with this Kaaba. And you would think that for a moment that, he'd be comfortable, he would be satisfied. That me and my son built this Kaaba that forever and ever and ever will be the qibla for our Muslims. From around the world, you point yourself towards that Kaaba that I built with my own hands. That's commission. That's commission. Yet when he's done, says, Rabbana taqabbal minna. Allah, just please accept it from me, if it's possible. Meaning he doesn't say that, all right, I'm good to go. Let's hop on a plane, let's go to Cuba, we're good to go, we're retired. Commission, no doubt. Doesn't say that, right? Doesn't become satisfied. He says, maybe one brick wasn't the way you wanted it, Allah. Maybe it was a little bit off. Maybe this was off or that was off. All I want is for you, if you can accept one brick of this Kaaba, I'll be happy. Look at the approach of this massive deed he did for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And someone like me comes to one Jummah after 18 Jummahs and says, yeah, I went to Jummah today, man. I feel good. That's good, I'm good to go. And we approach the idea of good and bad like a balance sheet. Right? 10 good, 4 bad, 6 in the black, profit. I'm good. Good today. That's not how it works. And Shaytan does that. Whereas Allah says, look, I want you to what? I want you to hide your faults and hide your good deeds as well. Bury the deeds that you do that are good, just like you bury your faults. Don't expose your faults and don't expose your good deeds. Because respect is not in your hands. Respect is in my hands. وَلِلَّهِ الْعِزَّةُ. Respect is the exclusive property of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He determines who to give it to, who not to give it to. If we take that equation into our own hands and announce to the world, I've done this, I've done that, I've done this, I've done that, then those are satanic tricks, not godly tricks. Let him from the right, those good deeds, don't allow Shaitan to taint those deeds or contaminate those deeds or allow you to think, or allow someone like me to think my one small good deed is tantamount to something that's huge. No. Pray to Allah, Allah please accept 1% of my good deed. That's all I ask. That's why Imam Jafri Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, he says that the maintenance of sincerity is the most difficult act to do. I've said this 1,000 times to all of you. Especially in Muharram, and I say this, with the utmost respect. You know where all of you know where I'm coming from now. There's no takallufat between us. When things become annual and customary, and we know that on this fulan date, at this fulan time, this is a person's majlis. At somewhere along the line, in the beginning of the majlis, there was a beautiful discussion that I want to have the dhikr of Hussein inside of my home. And that's a beautiful niyat. It really, truly is. People often ask me about house majlises. Are you a big fan? Are you a big fan? I believe that house majlises are beautiful. I truly believe that one of the quickest avenues of the barakat of Allah on the earth onto our homes, and the ascension of, the descension of angels as a protective shield around the house is the majlis of Imam Hussein. I truly believe that. So somewhere along the lines, there was a sincere thought that we're going to start doing this, and inshallah every year it's my small khidmat to Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. Beautiful, beautiful thought. It truly is. 25 years later, it becomes very difficult to maintain that seed of spirituality. Because now we start taking attendance. Yeah, dosa say you weren't here. One more year and you're cut from my invite list. If 1 year we decide not to have halim and have, let's say, kebab roll, there's qayamat. That I come to your majlis because I know it's the best halim in town. And now you went from the idea of dhikr al-Hussein to dhikr al-Halim. And now that's what happens. I'm dead serious. Now to revive that somehow is very dangerous. Now if you're not, and it's possible, sometimes you just don't feel like doing it every single year. It's tiresome, I don't have the time, I'm tired, but you can't stop it. Why? It's been 25 years. Very difficult. Very difficult. And that's all Shaitan, attacking from the right, from the yameen. Yameen are your good deeds. It makes sense from the bad deeds. That's where Shaitan, of course, is residing. He's going to pull you towards him. That, of course, is obvious. But when it comes to those deeds that we actually do with sincerity, right away, he acts up and says, look, you make sure that you get your proper credit for this deed. Do not for a moment allow nobody to know about what you did. This idea that it's between you and Allah, forget it, man. Make sure you tell at least 10 people what you did. Because those 10 people will do talia and shabash and pat your back and give you all sorts of dad and all sorts of respect. And that's all you want. You want people around you to respect you. And so 10 becomes 20, 20 becomes 40. And Hadith says that what was an act that was written in your book as a ni'mat now becomes a niqmat. What was once an avenue of the pleasure of Allah now is the avenue of the wrath of Allah. The same deed. But we allowed Shaitan to enter that equation and take that yamini deed and make it into a shamali deed. It's literally what he means by right and left. Okay? So I ask you, please, let's be very careful. Let's maintain our sincerity. Let's always have the bigger picture in mind, especially in these days of Ayam Azah. We're ending Muharram in a couple of days. We start suffering in a matter of a couple of days. We're halfway through the Ayam Azah. Right? And while there's a lot of sincerity in these days, there's a lot of riyah also in these days as well. I'm sorry to say that. And that's the reality. I really do apologize. And you have to regain this idea of the khulus of this azah, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Now, how do we combat this very quickly in the masaib, inshallah? It's already 8:40 almost. And that is the idea of, first of all, understanding how Shaytan works. And the beauty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that He actually recorded this entire conversation in His book. And really understand what Allah is doing here. Allah is saying, look, I can tell you all about my beauty and my service and my worship and how much is great for you to do sujood to me and ruku for me, but you need to understand who your enemy is well. Dushman shinasi, understanding your enemy is very, very key. Not just Shaytan inside of you, Shaytan outside of you as well. Not just satanic forces that are there to drive you off the path, but satanic forces that are also outside of you as well. All that is very important. So Allah says, look, I am there, no doubt, but also understand there's a force out there, and this is exactly what his tactic is going to be. So be prepared. That itself is a blessing, to know exactly how Shaitan will come. There's no surprises. The problem is that we need to build a little bit of willpower and start to believe in ourselves. And have self-confidence. Because what Shaitan has done, he's played with the youth in terms of their self-worth and their self-confidence. And he's made them believe that you're no good. So any little that you do is huge for someone like you. Because you do 1,000 things wrong, and do this one thing good, you're here, let's say on a Saturday night, you could be anywhere. And you'll go home and you'll feel great about yourself. And the moment you feel great about yourself, your guard is down from Shaitan. Now Shaitan comes in and says, oh, that felt good? Yeah, it should feel good. Now come in, let's do this on the left side. This also feels great as well. And he plays with your emotions and pulls your strings. And actually destroys everything that you've done in your past. And so dushman al-shinasi, you open enemy, innahu lakum aduwwun mubin. Your open enemy, the Quran says. Know where he's coming from. Fine? Now, how can we combat that? One area is the idea of continue to surround yourself with the right people. Continue to do good. Serve the community. I often tell this to many of my youth. They ask me, oh, how'd you end up in the Hawza? I don't know. I really don't know. But what I do know is that I was obsessively attached to my community. I would not miss one Thursday night. It's a very simple point that I want to make with all of you, inshallah. Move towards masaib. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. We are forgetful human beings. The word insan, some say, comes from nisyan. We're forgetful. We forget these things. Even now, you're sitting here saying, yeah, that makes sense. But tomorrow morning we'll forget. I'll forget. So we need a constant reminder. We hear about these great stories of these great ulama, the great urafa, and some ulama like to share stories of them on the minbar, and that's all great. But one thing that all of them would say constantly is that on Wednesday night when our class was done, and Thursday and Friday in Iran or in Qom, of course, is the weekend, there will be no class, no dars. So Thursday and Friday, there's no class. It's ta'til, it's a holiday. Saturday morning, you start fresh. And they would say, these are big buzurg ulama, would say that Saturday morning, we felt a little bit of deflation inside of us. These lights began to dim a little bit. And our ustad would feel the fact that you're not the same you were on Wednesday night, on Wednesday evening. He has to restart from Wednesday and recapture what? 2 days. Only, just 2 days of the fact that they weren't with that constant symbol of dhikr. They weren't attached to that ustad of theirs. They weren't attached to that path of Allah for them. For only 2 days. In those 2 days, muttaqi, pious men who never missed namaz al-shab felt that there was a little bit of a drop inside of me in 2 days. Go Saturday morning, he'd pump us up again to where we were Wednesday night and start from there. Often the times they would say that my worst class is Saturday morning. My worst class is Saturday morning. I have to undo the weekend and start fresh. Think about Monday mornings for all of you. Monday mornings. These are buzurg ulama. The Alama Tabatabayis and Shib Mutahariz, and these are huge ulama. If that's the case for them, what about people like me? That I go weeks and weeks and months without ever stepping foot in an Islamic center. When we know that there's a program weekly, and some of you live, I know, 40 miles away, for example, 80 miles away, 20 miles away, that's fine. If there is a community around you, close by you, doesn't matter what language it's in, make it a point to go at least once a week and take your children with you, please. It's okay if they go to bed at 10 o'clock that one Thursday night. And instead of having 10 hours of sleep, they have 8 hours of sleep. It's okay if you spend an extra 5 minutes and waking them up. I have seen from my own life, and I'm not saying nothing about myself, that one area that caused me to fall in love with Islam, all I have is love, I don't do anything, I love Islam, is the fact that my childhood, my teenage years, my uni years, all were obsessed with the community. And I know a lot of you who live close by to BQ are here a lot, alhamdulillah, but not as many as I would like. So we cannot honestly expect to fight Shaytan when we don't have a counter argument for him. Do you understand that? There can't be an imbalance. It can't be that Shaytan is with me, he's my shadow. He's not going to leave you. I told you, he's waiting for all of us on our path to ambush us. And to combat that, we have nothing on this side. Until the big days happen. Muharram comes and month of Ramadan comes and Nina Sha'ban comes. Those are great. It's just not enough. Those are big explosions. We need small things, right? The example I'll give you in the masaib is what? That we go camping, as you know, every single year in Toronto, and every single night we have a campfire. We always have 1 or 2 guys that are fire experts. I don't ask, but they're fire experts. Because they're very quick to say, I want to light the fire. I go, dude, okay, whatever you want to do. And they're very smart. And I try to be an expert, say, look, get some big logs and put them in the middle and light the logs on fire. And they'll say, Asad, just sit down over there, please. And give us your khutbah and dars in about 10 minutes. Let us handle the fire. And what they do is, they don't even look at the big logs. They go and they gather small twigs. Small twigs. A bunch of small twigs. And they put those small twigs in the middle and they surround themselves with big logs. And they put paper in there and they put other things and then they begin to light the small twigs one by one. And the small twigs get on fire and fire and fire, and then those twigs now, that fire lights the logs on fire. And once the logs are on fire, we're set for hours now. But it can't be the other way around. You can't have a big fire on a log, it's not going to work. It has to be small twigs to maintain the fire. A lot of you ask me, how come I can't maintain 10 days of Muharram? I feel so good after Ashura, but after Ashura, it goes down. Why is that the case? Because you're lighting the log on fire. Not the twigs on fire. The small twigs are Shab Jummas. The small twigs are small gestures throughout the year. These are small twigs. When those small twigs are lit, now when Muharram comes, Muharram becomes revolutionary for us. A reform for us. Not just Wahak, that's a beautiful majlis. Great majlis. What did it do in your life at home? Because there's a whole process between enlightenment and reformation. We're enlightened, we're blown away. That was amazing. But there's no reform happening. There's no revolution happening because our small twigs aren't lit yet. We can't come on Shab Qadr and light our big logs. It's not going to work, I'm sorry. We can do Bika Ya Allah all we want. We won't get that light that we're looking for because the twigs aren't lit yet. So part of the Shaitan's process is, he'll say, fine, go to your 10 days, have that wow moment, but that wow moment, I'll pop that balloon come 11th Muharram. Happens all the time. And it frustrates our youth. I'm just tired of the seesaw, up, down, forget it, I'm out. And Shaitan says, excellent, one more on my paper. I'm going down, I'm taking the ship with me. Light your twigs on fire. Small twigs. And then expect the day of Ashura, the night of Qadr, the night of Pandar Shaban to be these big explosions. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Because the reality is, and I say this all the time, the sacrifice to bring the deen to all of you the sacrifice made by those before us is too great for us, to take this deen at a lazy and a complacent level. It's one thing where we remember those shuhada on the day of Ashura that were grown men. We talk about the Habibs, we talk about the Muslims, we talk about, let's say, the Jones and the Zuhair ibn Qayyim and Abu Fazl. These are grown men on the day of Ashura. They were meant to go to battle. They were meant to fight, these men. And as devastating as it is, no doubt, these are grown men. No doubt. But then when you hear about 10-year-olds and 12-year-olds, when Janab Qasim was ready to go to battle, Abu Fazl Abbas couldn't find the armor that would fit him. 3 or 4 times the book say they would change the armor of Qasim. It's too big. It won't fit him. The helmet would slip on his head. Imam Hussein had to tie a green imamah, put it on Qasim's head, then fit the helmet on Qasim. Those people are not meant to fight in wars. And then you go even further down, and you go all the way down to a 4-year-old of Imam Hussein. A 4-year-old. And tonight, just a little bit of masaib about Bibi Sakina. Devastating. And I ask my fathers in the audience who have 4-year-olds, I have a 5-year-old at home. And you know how close daughters are to their fathers. For years I've been hearing about the fact that Bibi Sakina would sleep on the chest of Imam Hussein, sleep on the chest of Imam Hussein, sleep on the chest of Imam Hussein. Until there came, my own experience one night where my 4-year-old would come to me and say, Baba, I can't sleep. And I would hold her and she'd rest her head on my shoulder and she'd begin to sleep then. And it finally dawned on me that this was a very real emotion that Bibi Sakina felt. So on Sham al-Ghiba, when she's devastated and she's tired and she's on fire, she goes running towards the Maktab. The Baba, where are you? Aina, Baba. Where are you? I just want that chest. I just want that sukoon one more time. And then he says, Ya bunayya ilayya, come, I'm right here. This is the same Sakina. On Asr Ashur, Imam Hussein does his wida, his khudafis, everything. Gives his aman to Zainab, mounts the horse, but the horse doesn't move. The horse doesn't move. The horse doesn't move. He says, Azul Jalal, I know you're tired. You have been with me since morning. Lash after lash, shaheed after shaheed. Just drop me in the Maidan of Karbala and leave me alone, please. Your zahmat is tamam. And it's almost as if he would say that, Mawla, I'm not tired. I'm with you till the very end. He bows his head, one tear going down. Mawla, I'm with you. But if you can just tell your 4-year-old Sakina to let go of my legs, I can move you towards the Maidan. Imam Hussein gets off the horse, hugs Sakina. Sakina says, my Baba's very tired. My Baba's very thirsty. If you can, take him to Furat for a drop of water. The same Sakina that's found in the Zindan of Sham, in this prison of Sham. And Sheikh Abbas Qummi narrates one night that she goes to sleep. And halfway through the night, she has a dream. And in front of her is her father, in the same state that he was in front of Imam Sajjad. Zakhm upon zakhm, blood upon blood. And Bibi Sakina says, Baba, you look uncomfortable, Baba. Is everything okay, Baba? You look upset, Baba. And he would say that, Sakina, you know that without you, there's no sukoon inside of my heart. I miss you dearly. I can't live without you. He begins to cry. Sakina begins to cry. At that moment now, Sakina wakes up from the dream. And she wakes up in a panic. She says, I see my Baba here somewhere. I can smell my Baba. Where's my Baba? She begins to cry. She cries, Zainab cries, Kulthum cries, and the entire Zindan begins to cry. Yazid says, what is this noise? It's the daughter of Hussein. Send the head to Sakina now. This head is brought to Bibi Sakina, the head of her father. Can you imagine a 4-year-old who hasn't seen her father since the day of Ashura now? This head is brought to her. She holds the head, kisses the head. Baba, who severed your head from your body? Baba, why is there blood on your face? Baba, why is there zakhmi on your head? She begins to cry. She hugs her father, cries and cries and cries. That morning, Bibi Zainab says that Imam Sajjad, it's time for Fajr. Go wake up Bibi Sakina. He calls out Sakina. There's no arise. Sakina, there's no reply. Imam Sajjad goes. They're lying there, clutching the head of her father. He begins to shake Bibi Sakina. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Hey, Papi Amma, come and help me. Bibi Zainab enters the Zindan. Sajjad, do we bury her with this burnt kurta or take it off? Say, Papi Amma, leave her kurta on. She has zakham upon zakham. Leave the kurta on. They bury Sakina in the very same kurta in the Zindan of Shah. سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. مات ابن حسين يا حسين.